Did you know that there's actually several different rhythm counting systems besides just one eanda, two eanda? And one of them in particular, I think, is probably superior if you want to truly master rhythm.
My name is Josh Gu, and I'm taking my years of experience learning, teaching, and performing, and sharing all of my best clarinet and music tips so you can get more out of your practice, and most importantly, have fun. You can learn more about all of my many resources at QuickStartClarinet.com, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post new videos.
So first of all, what I mean by truly master rhythm is a lot of what I talk about in my rhythm course, True Rhythm Mastery. And it's this idea of going from sort of what I call a rhythm faker, where you feel like you're kind of faking your way through rhythms. You have to hear somebody else play it first or hear a recording first, and then you can play it fine. But looking at the notation on the page, trying to decode that and turn that into an actual rhythm is a little bit tricky. And sometimes, even if you are able to look at the page and think you're sort of seeing the ratio of note values fitting together, you're still falling into the fake rhythm trap. And the moment you turn on the metronome, it starts to get frustrating, and you can't practice with the metronome for more than like 5 minutes at a time without totally losing it and getting frustrated. And the reason is because you're falling into that fake rhythm trap where you're thinking that like the note value should go sort of at this pace, and you're trying to get that pace going, and you have that sort of recording in your head of the speed that those notes go at. And if that happens to be exactly the same pace that the metronome's going at, and you start exactly with the metronome, then it does work out occasionally. But most of the time, the recording in your head is not exactly at the same pace that the metronome's going. So you're kind of going in parallel, hoping that you end up together, rather than actually connecting to the beat with every single count and every single beat in the measure where it should be. So that's the difference between being a rhythm faker, where you're just kind of feeling it, and when you're playing with other people, it usually goes pretty okay. When you're playing without the metronome, it goes pretty okay, but you turn on the metronome and everything gets frustrating and confusing and just becomes an obnoxious click in the background rather than a useful tool to actually help you, which is what you get when you are a true rhythm master and you have that true rhythm mastery developed so that you can connect to the beat, lead to the beat, see any rhythm written on the page, put it with the beat at just about any tempo, and really comprehend it and understand it and know how it works. So what does this all have to do with rhythm counting systems? Well, I think the traditional numbers counting system that most people use does a little bit to help us fall into the fake rhythm trap, actually, because the big foundation of the fake rhythm trap, and the big thing we need to avoid, is thinking about the note values in terms of their duration. And we have such an association with counting that when we see a whole note, for example, and we know that a whole note takes up 4 beats, and if we conceptualize those 4 beats as 1, 2, 3, 4, then it's a natural conclusion that we see a whole note and we think, hold it, 1, 2, 3, 4. A whole note is 4 counts. We hold it for 4. But that's the fake rhythm trap when we think about how long we're holding the notes for. I had this in a rehearsal recently where the conductor was talking about some flute part where it was a quarter note tied to a whole note and said, it's just 5 counts long, so make sure that you hold that for the whole 5 counts. But that's totally rhythm faking, because a quarter note tied to a whole note, yes, it does technically get held for 5 beats, but if you're conceptualizing it as 5 beats, it's going to be really hard to know if you did it correctly. You're going to lose the inflection of the time signature and the sort of emphasis of those beats and the way that they lead and land, which I talk a lot more about in the True Rhythm Mastery course. And it's just not the way that you should think about it. You should think about it as you start on beat 4, you hold through 1, 2, 3, 4 beats of a whole measure, and then you play on the next beat 1. And that's the most important part of it, is it doesn't matter how long you're holding the note for, you play the next note on the beat that it's supposed to be on. And this kind of rhythm mastery opens up so much freedom and flexibility, because what if one of the other parts during that whole note, say they dropped a beat or something, it's just a whole note being held and that other melody happening, that melody drops a beat, not a problem at all if the flutes holding the whole note are paying attention and the conductor is paying attention and notices, oh, we skipped beat 2, okay, there's 3, 4, and then now we're back at 1. It's not a problem at all. Technically it was incorrect and not the right rhythm or how the music is supposed to go, but the ensemble won't suffer because the flutes know they come in on beat 1. So wherever that beat 1 is, we're in good shape. We've truly mastered the rhythm because we have that flexibility. When you know something so well and you're so confident with something, that's actually what gives you the freedom to be flexible with it. Quick tangent about that. You're also a rhythm faker if you're often saying, oh, this piece is slow and beautiful and I'm just taking some liberties with it. There's no such thing as taking liberties with rhythm. When you have truly mastered rhythm and can connect to every beat, you can be flexible with that beat and have freedom with it, but you aren't really taking liberties. You're intentionally being flexible with it. But that's a whole nother tangent rant for another video. But that's one of the things that drives me the most crazy is when students say, oh, I was just taking liberty with the tempo because even if it says rubato, but yeah, it's not how it works. Rant over. So when it comes to the counting systems, the traditional numbers counting system makes it super intuitive and a natural conclusion to see a quarter note tied to a whole note or really any note value and say, okay, how long am I holding that for? How much do I count to as I'm sustaining that note? The system that I think is actually better and is absolutely superior when it comes to really connecting to the beat is the Gordon system. There's a great video that I'll leave linked in the description that explains the Gordon system and shows sort of the ins and outs of it. But the basic overview of it is that Gordon arranges the rhythm counting syllables into what he calls macro beats and micro beats. The macro beats are basically what we would normally put as the numbers. The micro beats are the ands and sort of the upbeats. And then the Gordon system also calls them like divisions or something like that, which are the E's and the U's, the 16th notes and the smaller subdivisions from the number system. And the way that this works is that you have the same sort of rhythmic inflection feel, no matter how it's written, no matter what time signature it's in, which makes it really nice and really intuitive for how rhythm is actually felt. And it makes sure that you always have the rhythmic inflection and the time signature inflection of the leading and the landing beats incorporated into the counting system itself. So how this would work is if we had a measure of just quarter notes in 4/4, which are all the macro beats, you would count it do, 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 du for the syllable. And then the micro beats would be the 8th notes, and those get the day syllable, which is de. So a measure of 8th notes in 4/4 would be do, day, do, day, do, day, do, day, do. And the nice thing about this is you have that secure, every downbeat feels like a downbeat, every upbeat feels like an upbeat, which is really nice. And if we had 4/4 with a whole measure of 16th notes, the subdivision level in the Gordon system is ta. So it would be do ta de ta, do ta de ta, do ta de ta, do ta de ta, do. Which is a little cumbersome, I find, but I think if I learned it and got used to it, it would be totally the same and equally as easy as 1E and a 2E and a, and honestly maybe even easier. But that's how the Gordon system works as a very brief overview. Again, watch the video in the description if you want more information about it. But the reason why it's superior for true rhythm mastery and why it might be fun for you to experiment with a little bit in your counting and with your rhythm stuff is because you have that do lining up with the beat every single time. And it makes it so much more intuitive that every single beat has the same syllable. So you know that, like, if this is the metronome click, do, 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 like that do has to line up with it every time, no matter what rhythm I'm doing. do, day, do, day, do, day, ta, do ta, day, do ta, day. Whatever the rhythm is, we're connecting to it every single click. Whereas in the number system, and especially the way metronomes sort of go by default, most metronome apps, if you just turn them on, it'll be in 4/4 with an accent on beat 1. So you sort of get that 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the way we count, we're so interested in getting that repetition of 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. When we're counting, it's tempting to really just aim for lining up beat 1 and then hoping that we're staying the same pace throughout the measure, and then line up beat 1, hope we stay the same pace throughout the measure, which again is rhythm faking. So that's why I think the Gordon system might actually be superior to the number system as far as seeing how rhythms relate to the steady beat and always being well connected to the steady beat. Now, very interestingly, I personally don't use the Gordon system. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is I wasn't taught it initially, and I'm pretty comfortable with the number system, and the number system works well for me, even given its flaws. So I just kind of stick with that. Two, the number system is much, much more universal. If I said, what's your note on the and of 3? Pretty much any trained musician would be able to tell me. Whereas if I said, what's your note on the day after the third do? First of all, everybody would look at me like I'm crazy. And even if people did understand the Gordon system, they would still be confused and it's still cumbersome to say like, okay, the third do and then the day. So it's a little bit finicky that way as well. And then the last reason why is because I think you can get the same benefits from the Gordon system with the number system if you learn it correctly and if you're thinking about it correctly. I do think it would be interesting to see a world where the Gordon system was the default counting system. Gordon came up with this whole music learning theory idea and really went in depth with it. And I think it's a lot of great ideas. And I think if we taught music initially from those systems, it could end up being a lot better. But for now, we kind of have this universal number system to work within. And I think we can bring the benefits from the Gordon system to the number system if we think about it correctly. And that's what I go in large depth in the True Rhythm Mastery course, is how to sort of see the numbers, not as how we intuitively see numbers, but how we can actually make it make sense with rhythm and connect with rhythm and connect with that steady beat. And since I went so in depth with the flaws of the number system, I will give one flaw of the Gordon system as well, besides just the universality of it. And that's going back to that example that I was talking about with the flutes playing the quarter note tied to the whole note. In the Gordon system, when you have longer notes like that, it becomes challenging to keep track of sort of where you are within the beat, where you are within the measure, because ultimately you do end up just having to count 5 do's on that. You do whatever your rhythm is on beats 1, 2, 3, and then you get to beat 4 and you go do, 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 next one, moving on. And it works. There's nothing wrong with it. And especially if you've been sort of trained in that system the whole time of your playing, then you're very good at sort of keeping track of the internal beat because, again, we're connecting to it every single time. So somebody who's well-versed in the Gordon system absolutely would have no problem with that. But there's no clarity on what beat do you actually play on next. Yes, we play on do next, but which do? Every beat is a do. And that's where the number system has a tiny advantage, because in that example we can count 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and I know that I'm playing on 1. And the number system is kind of connected to the conducting system, where we know here is beat 1, here is beat 2, here is beat 3, here is beat 4, so we know where in the measure we are. And again, if you're very well versed in the Gordon system, then you can do that pretty much intuitively, and you know when you see the conductor do this, that's that do visually in the measure, but it's not inherent in the system that this is 2 and this 2 is different than this 3 and different than this 4, rather than in the Gordon system. This do is technically different than this do and technically different than this do, but there's nothing inherent in the system to show that. So I hope that gives you some food for thought on all these different rhythm counting systems. Again, this was just 2 systems. There's several other systems out there as well. These are my 2 favorite for the universality of the number system and clearly keeping track of where in the measure you are, and then the Gordon system for its actual intuitive, natural understanding of rhythm, which I think is really fantastic and unmatched by any other system, really, in my opinion. And if you want to feel more comfortable with incorporating the steady beat, leading to the steady beat, moving from being a rhythm faker to truly mastering rhythm, where you will have all of the freedom and control of your rhythm to have better practice, better playing with the metronome, all of that good stuff to become an overall better musician, then definitely check out my course, True Rhythm Mastery. I hope that this video has been interesting, helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in another one. And last but not least, a huge heartfelt thank you to the Dennersons. This is like the QuickStart Clarinet family who supports the channel and helps to make everything that I do possible. If you would like to support the channel and get some awesome rewards in return where we can work one-on-one over video and you can have my full support moving forward on your clarinet journey, then go to quickstartclarinet.com/supporter.